I've created here a simple window which consists of a border, stack panel, and rectangle. Let's have a look at the code behind. In the code behind, I've attached handlers for mouse down and mouse enter events on the window, border, stack panel, and rectangle. In the handlers, I just log some information about the occurred events. Let's look at how events work in the runtime. When I move the mouse pointer, you can see that firstly mouse enter fires up on the window, then on the border, then on the stack panel, and finally on the rectangle. If I move my mouse back, they won't fire up until I leave the window. Then I can move inside my mouse again, and you can see in the output window that events are getting fired. Let's click on the rectangle. As you can see, the mouse down event is bubbled. It starts from the rectangle and bubbles until it reaches the window level. There's a little trick I want to mention. Events like mouse down or mouse enter are not erased on the elements which don't have the background. In other words, if their background is set to null. Let's remove the background from the stack panel and the border and run the application. I'm slowly moving my mouse, and what we see is that firstly mouse enter fires at a window level, then at a border level, and then surprise, we don't see the mouse enter event on a stack panel until our mouse hovers the rectangle. When it hovers the rectangle, we see that both on the stack panel and the rectangle mouse enter events fire up. What's going on here? The thing is that our border and stack panel now doesn't have a background. So when the mouse pointer crosses the red border line and stays between the rectangle and the red border line, it actually hovers the window element. If we make a click here between the border line and the rectangle, we actually see that mouse down fires up at the window level. In order to fix this odd behavior, you need to instantiate either border's background or stack panel's background, or both borders and stack panel's backgrounds. If you want to instantiate a background of a UI element and make it transparent, then you can actually set the background of that element to the special value named transparent. Let's set the border's background to transparent and get back the original value of the stack panel's background. Let's check how it works. When I click between the red border line and the blue stack panel, you can see that mouse down event bubbles and it starts from the border element. When we hover the blue background, the mouse enter event immediately fires up on the stack panel element. Okay, we've been talking about how direct and bubbling events work. Let's look at three important properties of routed event arguments. I'm talking about the handled, source, and original source properties. By using the source property, we can determine the UI element of the logical tree which fired up the event. By using the original source property, we can determine the UI element of the visual tree which fired up the event. For example, it can be a text block of a button. We can stop the propagation of an event by setting the handled property to true. Let's try these properties in practice. I want to stop the propagation of the mouse down event on the stack panel. Besides, I want to change the background of the event source UI element. I've prepared a short code snippet. Let's look at it. I just log the original source and source properties here. Then I try to cast the source UI element object to a rectangle and change its background color. Then I check the event sender if it is a stack panel. If it is, then I mark the event as handled and bubbling stops. Let's run the application. I move my mouse to the rectangle and click on it. And as you can see in the output window, the event bubbles until it reaches the stack panel. It doesn't bubble up to the border and the window. Okay, I hope we've figured out how all these things work. Let's take a brief look at tunneling events. I'll just uncomment the corresponding code, and I'll comment out attaching to mouse down and mouse enter events. Let's run the application. I'll click on the rectangle, and as you can see in the output window, the tunneling event starts from the root element and tunnels until it reaches the rectangle. Okay, let's recap what we have learned in this module.